All right, everybody, welcome to Studio B. I am your host, Pastor MDH. Thank you so very much for joining us here on the set today. Remember, wherever you are watching us from, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, make sure that you like, comment, follow, and subscribe. As a matter of fact, stop what you're doing right now and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and then click that little bell so that you'll be notified every time that we go live and drop another episode here on Studio B. Big shout out to all of our ones who follow us and who keep updated with our content. We got some good stuff going on. We are in the process right now of redoing some things here in the studio, and I think you're going to like the changes that are coming down your way. So make sure that you stay tuned for that. Today I want to talk to you, and we're going to have maybe a little bit of a lengthy one today, maybe about 30 minutes. So go ahead and set your watch to it. Get out a pen and a piece of paper. We're going to dive deep so that we are able to learn how to better ourselves. And I want to talk about one word, and it's normally a word that we don't typically like to hear. And it is the word change. 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 The average person does not do very well with change. However, change is a necessary aspect of life. And whether you know it or not, you are constantly changing. A few months ago, as I was recovering from my leg surgery, I was actually in physical therapy when I got the call that there was somebody here who was asking about me. And this particular person, once I found out the name, I had not talked to this person probably since high school. And I've been out of high school a little over 30 years. So I haven't seen this guy or heard from this guy in a very, 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 very long time. So come to find out that he was asking a particular person about me, and then he asked another person about me, and so on and so forth. So by the time I got to the office, I was hearing all of these stories about this individual who was looking for Pastor Holman because he knew me when we were in our childhood years or our teenage years as we went to high school together. He talked about when we played football together and how we were both running backs and how all of these different experiences that we had in high school. And this is some 30 plus years removed. And as they were telling me this story, they were talking about this particular person and how they were dressed and some of the mannerisms of this particular person, how he moved and how he flowed and all of these other different things. And as they were telling me this, I remember that person to move, flow, and dress in that particular manner some 30 plus years ago. And as I got to thinking about that, I said to myself, how could a person that I knew 30 years ago still be talking the same way, dressing the same way, and living the same way that I remember him living some 30 years ago, and he has not evolved in his thinking, and his life has not taken a dramatic change in another direction? How could anybody go for such a prolonged period of time without changing? And then I realized that people just don't like to change. Think about it in your own world. Once you got a routine, you hate for that routine to be disturbed. You hate when people throw off what you do on a daily basis, because we all establish some type of habits in life that we typically get comfortable with. And even if those are necessarily bad habits, we develop habits that we live our life by. Well, the Bible has a whole lot to say about this idea called change. And it's something that if you've been in church for any length of time, you've heard it. If you've not been in church, I'm going to introduce it to you today. But it comes out of Romans chapter number 12, verses 1 and 2. And this is something that, again, you know it verbatim because you've heard it preached and taught, and all of these different aspects of Christianity. You've heard about these particular verses. But this is one of the most difficult verses to do because it takes intentionality in order to accomplish it. Watch Romans chapter number 12. I beseech you, brothers, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable, which is your reasonable service. And then verse number 2, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is the good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So we've heard that, Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, that we can't be conformed to this world, but we got to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. What does that word renewing mean? It means to change your mind. Whether you know it or not, in the past 24 hours of your life, you have changed in some aspect. There's new information that you have now brought into your sphere that is changing your outlook on life or person or circumstance. We are always changing. The person you are today is not the same person you were last month or last year or 5 years ago. We are always changing. The problem is that most of us are not intentionally changing. We are just by chance, happenstance, and all of the factors that go along with life, evolving through life. But this here in Romans chapter number 12 presents us with the clear challenge that our change must be intentional. So here's some of the questions that I've asked. What dictates a change? Factors such as education, personal experiences, relationships, or self-reflection all contribute to one's changing of the mind. Moreover, most of us have seen change in their behaviors and habits when we intentionally focus on them. Here's what I've discovered, is that most people will only change when negative circumstances arise. A husband will only get right when the wife is ready to leave the house. A wife will get right only when the husband is fed up. A child will begin to act right when they know that this is the most severe punishment that will follow something that you clearly told them not to do. We typically look at change as a negative response based on a negative situation. And therefore, your change never sticks. Therefore, the wife that is getting ready to leave and the husband says, okay, I'm ready to change, because it's viewed in a negative light, that change that he makes will never stick. The child that does not want to receive that severe punishment because of that repetitious act and the punishment that comes from it, because they view change in a negative space, they will never hold to the change that they say that they're given. Most of us don't look at change as good. We look at it as a bad thing. And that's the reason why many people cannot be consistent with change. That's the reason why if you look at your life, look at our lives, look at the lives in which many people that we know live, their life is filled with repetition and monotony. Because change is a word that they do not gravitate to. If change is going to be positive, hear what I'm saying, it must be intentional. And it's got to be viewed from a positive view as opposed to a negative view. How do you view change? See, if you want to get healthier, then it not only changes with your body. In order to change your body, what must you first do? Change your mind. In order to benefit anything in your life, it doesn't start with the benefit itself. It starts with the change in mind. If I want to get myself together, it doesn't start with me getting myself together. It starts with the decision to get myself together. It starts with the change. Unfortunately, we hate change. I want to share a couple things here with you because I've been thinking about this to a very large degree in where we are in regards to our society. Most people, there's a saying that goes, how do you eat an elephant? Well, you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? And when most people are looking at a change in their life, they focus on the big picture. Bam, I'm going to lose 50 pounds. Bam, I'm going to be in shape. Bam, bam, bam. They think about the big picture. But the big picture is filled with little steps. And so they will never, ever get to the big picture because they never begin with the little steps. And when you are beginning to make a change in your life, you got to start with small steps. Small steps help you to a longer journey. But so many people focus on the end goal, and that's what I'm trying to do. That's where I'm trying to be. This is where I'm trying to be at. And they miss the small steps that will eventually get them to the end goal. Therefore, they never start to move in the first place. Small habits make a big difference. And I was sharing even with my son that the habits that we make, the habits that we do, a recent study said that 80% of our habits are formed subconsciously. 80% think about that. 80% of our habits are formed subconsciously. We don't even know that we are forming habits. The way that you went to work today, think about it. That's the same way that you go to work every time that you go to work. When you came home, think about it. That's the same way that you go home every day. When you get into the office at the beginning of work, remember, you do something that you didn't even know that you started forming a habit that has become a daily part of your routine. What's the first thing that you do? Go to the coffee pot. That's a habit. You don't even know that you're forming habits as habits are being formed. 80% of the habits that we have are formed subconsciously, which means 20% of the habits that we form intentionally is a whole lot less than the ones that are being formed subconsciously. So I want you to think about this thing about change and why do we despise it so much? I know even from my own life, let me put myself on the witness stand. I know even from my own life that change can be a very difficult agent, especially when you've gotten very good at doing something. But in getting good at doing something, there's always a point in time to where what you are good at could be done better. And most people, because they are good at doing something, they stop right there at the good. No matter how good you are at that, there is a way to do what you are good at even better. But that requires change. And the change will go against your conventional habits that have been formed over years that you are now practicing daily without even knowing it. And so the Bible says, first of all, that I got to offer myself to God. I got to offer myself to God. And I want you to hear something, saints. God, every day of our lives, is trying to change us. He is trying to change our mentality. He is trying to change our nature. Every waking moment of our lives, God is trying to change us, trying to shape us into something different other than what we are. I want you to hear that God is not satisfied with who you are. God is not satisfied with who you are. God is intentionally every single day by the work of the Holy Spirit trying to change us and conform us into the image of Jesus Christ. That's what he's trying to do. And so Paul says the way that we do that is we first offer ourselves a living sacrifice. Give God our bodies. I've had such a monumental revelation, Macedonian road type of experience in these last 6 months of my life, coming off of this major leg surgery. My health was, let me just put it the way that I need to say it. I was busy and my health was being neglected. I'm not an out of shape person, but I was never in the best shape that I could possibly be in order for God to truly do in my life what God wanted to do in my life. And so with this surgery that I had, it caused me to slow down. It caused me to re-examine some things that I have in my life and to prioritize what mattered. And one of the priorities that I put from the bottom and moved it up to the top was my health. Because I don't care what God has for you. I don't care what big plan God has for you to do in the world. If your body does not cooperate, whatever God has for you is not going to happen. Your body must cooperate with the will of God. And so one of the things that I did was take the bottom priority of putting myself last and put that at the top priority and put myself at the top. meaning to make sure that my body was in the best physical condition that it can possibly be in for the glory of God and for the use of his kingdom. And so what did I do? I began to start working out. I began to start eating right. I cut out stuff in my life that was of no benefit to my health and to my well-being. And it started with a change in mind. It started with me changing my mind about the body that God gave me. See, if I'm going to offer my body a living sacrifice, if my body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, I should give God a good house to live in. So it first started with me understanding what the body was. I had to change my mind about my body, and that my body is not to receive secondary treatment while I'm living on this side. That if my body breaks down, I can't accomplish the will of God as it has been designed for my life. But it started with the change in mind. And this is what he says: if I'm going to offer my body as a living sacrifice, I got to offer something to God that God can use. And then it's got to be holy and acceptable, which is my reasonable act of service and or worship. So he says, I got to give God something first. If I got to give God something first, in our duties to God, we got to give God something. You got to give God something. You got to place something in God's hand. Then he says in verse number 2, I can't be conformed to this world. Now, here's where the problem of change comes in. Everybody's trying to change you. Like everybody's trying to change you. Your family, your wife, your husband, your children, your boss, your coworkers, your neighbors, people that you see in the grocery store, people that you meet at the gas pump. Everybody's trying to change everybody. Everybody is trying to change. So the world in which we're living in is giving us one of two options, either to conform or not conform. But you're going to do one or the other. You're going to either conform or not conform. You don't have a third option. So in verse number 2, Paul says that we should not be conformed to this world. But that's what the world is constantly trying to do, is trying to make us conform to its standards and making everybody fit into the same mold. And this is where free thinkers and people that think outside of the box have a very difficult time, and people that think inside of the box, because the world wants to make you color inside the lines. But as we are living lives of Christian men and women, we are called to live beyond what our physical eyes can see. And so Paul says that I can't be conformed to this world. How important is this to you? Saints of God, I want you to hear this. The minute you change your mind to do something better, you will. The minute you change your mind to do something better, you will. The minute you make your mind up that this is enough, I've had enough, I'm sick of being in this particular place, you will move from that particular place. But the minute you decide that, not somebody else deciding it on your behalf, you have to make the decision on an individual basis. And please hear this, God's not going to make that decision for you. You've got to make that decision that it's time to move past where you have gotten so comfortable being. And that's conforming. Conforming. Waking up and conforming. Waking up and conforming. Going to your job and conforming. I'm not talking about uniform. I'm talking about conforming. And when you conformed, you are placed in a box that you typically can't get out of. And so what does this mean when Paul says that I'm not to be conformed to the patterns of this world? I'm not to be conformed to the patterns of this world. Change happens with you. Time out for all you super spiritual Christians that think that God is going to do everything for you that requires none of your effort. You and I must participate in the plan of God as it relates to our lives. You think because you've been reading these horoscopes and you've been getting red blood prayer handkerchiefs and miracle spring water that God is some type of cosmic bellhop and that he's waiting for you to just rub the top of the Bible and out comes a blessing. That is not how God works. Please understand that God does not need the creation that he created. The creation needs the creator. The creator does not need the creation. And far too many Christians are waiting on God to do everything when you have done nothing. We can't be conformed to this world, to the patterns of this world. We have to be transformed. So what are my two options? One, I got to be conformed to this world. It only offers me two choices. I got to be conformed to this world. That's one choice. Conform to this world, the patterns of this world, the way that the world thinks, the way that the world responds, the value systems of this world. I have to be conformed to that. I got to fit into that nice, pretty mold that the world has sculpted for me. Or option number two, I can be transformed. I can either be conformed or I can be transformed. The choice is literally on you. You get to decide today whether I'm going to conform to the world standards, whether I'm going to believe what the world wants me to believe, or you wake up out of the bed every single morning and say, today, God, transform me. God, I am giving you permission to transform this mind of mine. So you got two choices and two choices only, conformity or transform. Which one do you want? I can tell you the easiest one is to conform. The easiest one that does not require a whole lot of effort on your part is to conform to what the world wants you to believe. It requires absolutely no effort. It requires you doing nothing out of the ordinary. It doesn't require any additional push. It doesn't require any additional effort. It does not require anything from you. It is the path of least resistance, is to conform to the world. It's easy. That's why most people choose it. The reason why most people are going along in the line in which the world has pathed out for them is because it's easier to go along than to get along. It's easier to do those things. I don't have to do a lot in order to conform to the world. I just wake up and figure out what is the thing of the day and go along with that. I look at the news, and whatever the news is telling me, that's what I go along with. I get on my social media feed, and whatever is the likes of the day, that's what I like. It's very easy to be conformed to the world, and it does not take any courage, any boldness on your side to do so. As a matter of fact, it's so easy to do it that you'll do it without even knowing it. Conforming to the world is a very easy thing to do. So that's one option. Either I'm conforming to this world and the patterns of this world, or two, he says in verse number 2, be transformed by the renewing of my mind. That means I have to be transformed. Now, this is where change becomes very, very difficult, because most people hang around other people that don't want to change. It's amazing in the example that I gave earlier that a man that I have never seen in 30 years comes to a place and expects to see the same person that he last saw 30 years ago. And in 30 years, my life has taken a 90-degree turn in several waypoints of my life. But this man is expecting to see the same person that he remembers from high school. He doesn't expect to see any change in that person that they used to call Rock. He doesn't expect to see any change in that person. He is fully expecting to come and see the exact same guy that he remembers from 30 years ago. And I'm saying to myself, wow, how can anybody in 30 years not have a change of mind, a change of mentality, a change in the way that they think and act according to their daily habits? How can anybody not change in such a long period of time? I know exactly why. I know exactly how. It's because changing takes courage. In order to change, it takes courage. I'm changing. I'm not the same person. We often tell married couples, if you've been married now for 20 years, the person that you married 20 years ago is not the same person that is laying in your bed today. That person has changed. And hopefully you have a relationship to where you can discuss the changes in viewpoints, the changes in the way that you think, the changes in how you look at life, because whether you say it or not, you've changed. And unfortunately, too many people don't talk about the changes. And so when the changes hit, they run into each other at 100 miles an hour. So Paul says, I got one of two choices. I can either conform or I can be transformed. Transforming takes a lot of courage, everybody. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage. It is so easy to underestimate the importance of one defining moment and underestimating the value of making small improvements on a daily basis. Too often we convince ourselves that massive success requires massive action. Whether it is losing weight, building a business, writing a book, winning a championship, or achieving any other goal, we put pressure on ourselves to make some earth-shattering improvement that everybody will talk about. Meanwhile, improving by 1% isn't particularly noticeable. Sometimes it's not even noticeable at all, but it can be far more meaningful, especially in the long run. These tiny improvements that you can make over time is astounding if you couple it with consistency. If you tell me that you want to lose 50 pounds and don't first understand that losing 50 pounds is going to require a process called time, you will never lose 50 pounds. You want to start a business and not understanding that a business requires time. You want to have a successful marriage and a beautiful family, but those things require time. And so if we don't change our mind to these things and begin to start making small incremental steps in order to achieve a bigger goal, we will never even begin the process. And so Paul says that you got to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I got to change my mind. And saints, to make this as an avenue of application, as you're sitting there listening to me now, and I pray that you are, you realize how difficult change is. Especially if you got some season on you, especially if you got some rust on those old joints. You realize how hard, almost impossible change is. If you're younger in your age, you got, your joints and the gears in your brain haven't gotten any rust on them, right? So, you can change gears relatively quickly when you're younger. But as you start getting 40, 50, and 60, and 70 and upper in years, those gears in the brain begin to get a little bit of rust on them, and it's hard to change them. It's hard to change them, especially when you've lived 40, 50, 60 years of your life in a certain way, and now you are demanded to change. It can be very intimidating. But again, most people look at change from a negative standpoint, which is why they never do it, which is why they never grow, which is why they never take the next step in life. It's because they don't understand change. And what I'm trying to do, and the principles that we're trying to interact here is, what is the big goal, figuring out what that is, and then asking myself, what is it going to take to get that? There's a high probability if you've identified a major goal, your current thinking is not going to get you to that goal. Because if your current thinking would have got you to that goal, you would have gotten to that goal a long time ago. So if you've identified a goal, there's a high probability that your current mindset is not going to get you to that goal. So there's going to have to be something done in order to change some demographics in your life to get you to said goal. If you're trying to lose weight, your mentality about eating must change, right? And so whatever I've identified, there's a high probability that I don't have the mental mindset that it takes in order to achieve said goal. So I have to change some things. I got to transform the way that I think. I got to renew my mind. See, if your marriage is on the brink of divorce, you need to renew your mind about your spouse. If your kids are acting crazy, You got to renew your mind about parenting. Right. But because you've been married for so long, or you've been a parent for so long, and you've always done it this way, you look at change as a negative aspect of your life, and you never, ever do it. And so a year goes by, no change. 2 years go by, no change. We are in 2024, y'all. I want you to look back on your life when we entered into the 20s. And all of those high and lofty goals that you, I, and we presented on New Year's Eve of 2020. And now here you are 4 years later. How many of them goals have you achieved? How many of those goals have you achieved? Okay, let's take it from 2020 and bring it to 2024. Remember, on the cusp of this New Year's Eve, that this was going to be a different year. This was going to be a better year. This was going to be the day that I got this right and got that in order and all that other good stuff. How many of those goals that you set less than 6 months ago have you achieved? I'm going to get out of debt this year. Are you out of debt? I'm going to get in shape this year. Are you in shape? I'm going to take a vacation this year. Have you taken a vacation? I'm going to go back to school this year. Have you gone back to school? I'm going to start a business this year. Have you started a business this year? And let me tell you the reason why the goal and then the action to achieving the goal is short-circuited. Because we only think about the goal and don't think about the steps to achieve the goal. That's why it never gets accomplished. It never gets accomplished because you're trying to be 100% better. I'm asking, the Bible is asking, that you get 1% better every day. That every day that there's a 1% chance that I'm going to be better today than I was yesterday. I am getting better every single day of my life. I'm not trying to eat the entire elephant. I'm trying to eat life one bite at a time. So the reason why many people make goals, set goals, but never achieve them is because they focus on the goal and not the steps to accomplish the goal. So in their minds, I made a goal. In their minds, man, I'm doing good because I want to do good, but never wind up doing good. And why is that? Because they don't transform. They don't renew their mind. They don't change it. And saints of God, if your mind, if where you are in life right now is satisfying to you, keep thinking the way that you think, keep talking the way that you talk, keep living the way that you live. If where you are right now is a good place in life and you've caught your stride, keep doing what you're doing. But I want you to hear, you and only you can change the trajectory of your life. Yes, God is able. I am not sitting right here on the set of Studio B had it not been for God in my life. No, there's no way that I am here except it be by the sovereignty and the graciousness of God. But in getting to this particular waypoint in my life, I, Marcus D. Holman, had to participate with God in the plan of God for my life. In order for me to be here, in order for me to be married 24 years, in order for me to have 4 children, I had to participate in the plan of God for my life. God didn't just say, hey, Marcus, man, I got some good stuff for you, man. I got this, and this, and this. Here it is. Here's the roadmap. Now you just sit there and I'm going to bring everything to you. Never, not once, is that how it worked. What God has for you, God has for you, but you have to participate in the process of bringing those things to pass. Now hear this, I could never be here with you in your living room or your smartphone or wherever you're watching this from right now if I first didn't change my mind. It starts right here. It starts right here with your thinking. And far too many of us got stinking thinking. And because you don't know how to change your mind, you stay in the exact same position that you've been in for a very, very, very long time. The difference is that a tiny improvement that you make over time is astounding. If you can get 1% better each day for 1 year, you'll end up 37 times better by the time that you're done. Conversely, if you get 1% worse every day for a year, you'll decline nearly down to zero. What starts as a small win or a minor setback accumulates into something much more. People say, I want to save money. Okay, save $1 a day. So you say, well, I'm going to save $500 a day. No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. Stop fooling yourself. You're not going to save $500 a day. If you've never saved $500 a day, you're not going to start saving $500 a day. Okay, you're just not. But here's what you do. Now watch my wording. My goal is to save $500 a month. That's my goal, is to save $500 a month. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start by saving $1 a day. I'm going to save $1 a day. I'm going to have a particular, water jug bottle in the corner of my room where I'm going to intentionally put $1 in every single day. $1 every single day. I'm going to intentionally put $1 into that jar every single day. Now, my goal is to save $500 a month, but I'm going to start by saving $1 a day. At the end of that month, I've saved $30. But here's what happened as opposed to that $30. You're looking at the $30, but it's not the $30. What you've trained your brain to do is to conceptualize saving. So now your brain has registered that we are going to save a certain amount every single day. So now your brain has now been fixed into a saving mode. As opposed to you going and say, I'm going to save $500 a month and I'm going to do it every single month. And you've never done it before. So you go out and try to save $500. You put $500 into the savings in month number 1. Your brain goes into shock mode. And before you know it, by the end of the month, you transfer that money from the savings back into your checking account. And at the end of the month, you haven't saved $500. You've actually spent more than you say that you were going to save. So what I am saying is, as we grow in incremental bits, the small steps that determines the journey, you will get better at what you were trying to get better at. But it starts with small steps. For a person that doesn't read their Bible every day and say, man, I'm going to read my Bible. I'm going to read a chapter a day, every single day. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're not going to read a chapter a day. If you go from not reading your Bible at all to trying to read a chapter a day, you are not going to do it. So here's what you do. You open your Bible up and you read a verse a day. Maybe you take a chapter and read a sentence out of that chapter every single day. So as you to get your mind into reading the scriptures every day. The 1%, the small steps. And so how many people have started a Bible reading program in a year and ain't nowhere near finished it? How many have tapped out after month number 2? How many say that I'm going to pray every day only to get past the first week? How many have made all of these great lofty goals that they have in no way, shape, or form fulfilled because they could not stick to what they say that they were going to do? This starts, everybody, with a change in your mind. I got to change the way that I think. I am 27 pounds down from January the 1st of this year, January the 7th of this year, 27 pounds down. Just yesterday, my entire family is in the gym working out because when daddy does something, it trickles down to the entire family. Right. And so to be very, very intentional about making sure that we take care of the temples in which God has given us. But guess where it started? Right here in the mind. Let me bring you this. Your habits, my habits, our habits are the compound interest in self-improvement. The same way that money multiplies through compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. They seem to make little difference on a given day, and yet they deliver over months and years and can be enormous. It is only good when looking back 2, 5, or perhaps 10 years later that the value of good habits at the cost of bad ones becomes strikingly apparent. So when Paul says, and let me finish this out for you, in Romans chapter number 12, beginning at verse number 2, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And then here's what's going to happen. You're going to prove what is a good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So Paul says that the way that we understand the will of God for our lives is by renewing our minds. That God is not going to reveal the will that he has for us with a corrupt mind, with a worldly mind, verse number 2. So if I have a worldly mindset, God is not going to reveal the will of God that he has for my life. But when I'm transformed and I renew my mind, I prove what is a good and acceptable, now hear this, the perfect will of God. I allow God the space to come in and change me. Nothing is going to be more important than you realizing the benefits of change. And unfortunately, some of you are dying on the vine. You're losing time. You're dying on the vine because you refuse to change. And not changing from a negative standpoint, but embracing change as an aspect to get you to a place that you've long dreamed about. To get you to a place to where you can begin to enjoy life. To get you to a place to where you can enjoy the God in which you say that you serve. But you got to get rid of the stinking thinking. You got to change up here. You have to change your mind and change it in such a way that God can do some great things in and through you. I pray that as you are turning over stones, that you are evaluating some things that need to be pushed off the table, that you are getting yourself out of circles that are bringing you down and bringing you back. I pray that you are in a space that is conducive for growth. And just hear this. Sometimes in life, you outgrow people. Yeah. Sometimes in life, you outgrow circumstances and situations. Sometimes in life, you're going one way and another person is going the other way. It happens. The difficulty with changing is when you change, you want to take everybody with you. What I have discovered, and it's a painful discovery, to be quite honest with you, is that there are a lot of people that don't want to change. And so I got to spend my time on the people that do. I have this little thing with me. You don't know if you can see that. I'll zoom in on that. Get a shot of that. Let me show you. Give me a close up. No, change camera angles or something. The way that you do it. This is a little cross that I keep in my hand here. I don't know if you can see that. You know, it's kind of bent up, but it's bent like that. It's made like that so that it can hold in your hands. I hold it like that. So I keep this cross on me. I keep it in my pocket. So if I got my hand in my pocket, I typically got this in my hand. It reminds me that in order to receive the ultimate sacrifice of what Jesus did on the cross, I got to change my mind. And it's a daily process, and sometimes it gets a bit taxing. But I want to encourage you out there in TV land and YouTube land and Facebook land and Reel and Short land and all of those other places. Change is difficult, but change is necessary. It's necessary for growth. And if you want to grow, Romans chapter number 12, beginning at verse number 1, therefore, brothers, by the tender mercies of God, I beseech you that you offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable act of service and or worship. And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is the good and acceptable and perfect will of God. That's how we do it. Two choices: conform or transform. Choice is yours. You decide what future, what life you are going to live based upon that choice. Everybody, I want to thank you for tolerating me here for a little bit. Thank you for your viewership and your followship. Thank you so very much for all of you guys who support Studio B and all that we are doing. We got some things coming up. Be on the lookout for that. There's going to be a whole lot of stuff coming down your pike. So make sure that you are subscribed to this podcast and that you've clicked the little notification bell right under subscribe so that you don't miss anything coming from the set of Studio B. Remember, when you are informed, you become empowered. Therefore, be informed, be empowered. Studio B.